Let the heavens rejoice and the earth be glad. The Joe and Joe Weather Show has returned from a 4-day hiatus. So wipe your tears, folks. We'll be talking about the week ahead in the long range in just a few short moments in the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, in Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island. And if you're a professional landscaper, or maybe you're a do-it-yourselfer, just get your truck over to Omni and get all the mulch and salt and sand and topsoil that you might need. 631-756-1125 is the phone number. They have the best prices in town. And the website is
OmniTrueValue.com. It hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't, and neither has Tempest by Weatherflow, our affiliate. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. And should you purchase this or any of the other weather gadgets, gizmos, or even high weather fashion that they have, use the coupon code Joe and Joe Weather Show and you get
a big 10, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% off.
And remember, the next holiday that approacheth is Father's Day. Ooh, I forgot to get rid of me. Hold on. Move you over to the right. And I think now I'll make myself a little bit bigger. And whoops. And there
Circle of Doom is back.
There we go. Well, you have the Circle of Death over there.
Yes, I do, and so does Joe Z. Maybe it's just a Joe thing that the.
Maybe it is. I mean, I have perfect. Everything's going out perfectly. I have the big green shiny light on the board, so it might be your local internet provider that is having an issue.
It might. I'll tell you what. If it's something local, Mrs. Rayo will certainly alert me to that in a few seconds.
Yeah. Now it's really funny, by the way. This Memorial Day holiday weekend, which we have said oftentimes in the last couple of weeks, how if there's going to be a problem in these summertime holiday weekends, this is usually the one where you run into a problem. The problem was between you and me, because I had 3 beautiful days here with morning lows in the upper 40s and low 50s and daytime highs in the low 70s each day. And except for some clouds for the first few hours after sunrise, it was, and actually that didn't even happen yesterday. It was wall-to-wall sunshine pretty much all day long. It was a really great weekend here, and in much of the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states, except for some high clouds that came in on a couple of occasions, it was a good weekend.
I tell you, I can't remember. Well, actually, I believe the last time we had a glorious stretch of weather coinciding with the Memorial Day holiday in the New York metropolitan area, you might have to go back something like 40 years. I think 1981, we had something like this, something similar. And I'm not just talking about 3 nice days. I'm talking about 3 absolutely superb weather days, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Now, if you went down to the beach, if you went down to the Jersey Shore or the South Shore of Long Island, you may have had something to complain about in that the winds were rather gusty, especially today, coming on shore, keeping temperatures mostly in the 60s, and also the rip current, and also the fact that, as you mentioned, Joe, there were some thin, high clouds softening the sunshine up, especially over central and South Jersey over the course of Sunday. But still, overall, this was a gorgeous, gorgeous 3 days of weather that we've had, and it, again, coincided with the first of the big 3 holidays of summer.
Yeah, a little backdoor cold front came down from New England and pushed through during the day today, and pushed all the way down into southern New Jersey. So that turned the winds to the east, and yeah, it made for certainly cooler along the shore. But you got to, that sort of thing you've got to expect this time of year. You just have to expect that there's going to be onshore winds even if the weather is a nice pattern like we've had, you're going to get winds coming in from off the ocean on probably all 3 days, or maybe if you get lucky, maybe 2 out of the 3.
And the temperatures of the water temperatures are still quite chilly, right around 60, upper 50s to around 60. So unless you were a member of the Polar Bear Club, this wasn't the best kind of day to jump into the water, and especially so with the rip current danger, especially along the Jersey and South Shore of Long Island. But still, we landlubbers enjoyed it. I mean, temperatures up here, Joe, we got into the lower 80s yesterday, and I think we were in the mid and upper 70s today. So
Albany got to 90 yesterday.
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, there's definitely this whole weekend. There was definitely an upside down nature to the temperature profile, because the warmest temperatures were actually up in upstate New York and in interior New England, as opposed to even here, where temperatures I was looking the other day, they put up an anomaly map of temperatures. I forgot for which day it was. Maybe it was back for Friday or something, where much of the state was running, everybody was below normal, and the southern half of the state was running 10 to 15 degrees below normal.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yep. The dichotomy, the difference. You can go from one place to another, and you can see it's either too hot or too cold. But here, I think in the immediate New York City metropolitan area,
it was Goldilocks.
Goldilocks, exactly. Just right.
Well, judging from some of the comments from our friends on the chat board, everybody seemed to have had a decent weekend for the most part. Although I see Johnny Quest said that he had over an inch of rain where he was in Northwest Virginia. That's Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina took the brunt of the rain over the weekend with that coastal low that developed, but did not become a tropical system. It was purely non-tropical. It had fronts on it. That's how you know it's not tropical, and definitely cold core. But nonetheless, it still produced headaches from the standpoint of rain in that zone from South Carolina up to about maybe southernmost Maryland, maybe a hair further north than that. But if you were on either side of that, you were in pretty good shape. So we're glad to see everybody is back tonight. Yes, we did take 4 days off, and we enjoyed every minute of it. So if you're watching the show in the background, join the conversation on the chat board. Subscribe to my YouTube channel by hitting the subscribe button with your Gmail account. And make sure you turn your notifications on, because you will be notified when the Joe and Joe Weather Show comes on, which is Monday through Thursdays at 7:35 p.m. Although we do have a small time change tomorrow. Tomorrow we will be at 7:45. Okay, 7:45 for tomorrow, everybody. So write that down. Sundays we are on at 11 a.m. So I had a good weekend. I did some. I started weeding my 1.5 acres, which is going to take me a lot because it's just me. So I will do a little bit at a time. So I got that done. I did a little fishing, which was nice. Unfortunately, I didn't do much catching, but I did do a little fishing, which was good. And I made steelhead trout tonight for dinner, Joe. It was insane how good it was.
Well, it sounds delicious. The highlight of my Memorial Day weekend was yesterday when we went to my son's house for a barbecue, and I watched as he killed a couple of carpenter bees. That was the highlight.
Well, they do. Were they wearing hard hats? Because they are union. You got to be careful with carpenter bees. I've always been fascinated by how they can just carve these perfect circle holes that are almost perfectly circular.
Well, we were underneath his deck, and in one corner of the deck, the bees were going into a small hole. And first, he tried spraying them a couple of times, and somehow it didn't work. They were still coming in and going out. So finally, he just took his sneaker off, walked over, waited until one of them settled in on a piece of wood, and that was it.
Carol DeCara on the chat board said she watched the Bob Ross marathon. I actually watched the Yellowstone marathon. on Paramount. So I caught up on some episodes in the first couple of seasons that I hadn't seen. So now I understand everything that's going on, and anxiously await for the second half, the season's second half, which I think is supposed to come up starting in August. But no matter. Let's
I have a Samsung, by the way. I have a Samsung Smart TV, and on when I'm not watching regular or broadcast television, I can simply go to the internet, and I have Bob Ross 24/7.
Oh God.
The Bob Ross channel is on 24/7, Joe. More Bob Ross than you ever could possibly hope or ask for. And thinking about it, I've been doing a lot of that lately. I've been watching that channel a lot over the last 2 or 3 days. But
you sure
anyway.
It's not a Samsung Smartass TV?
No.
You know, when you hit the remote, it says, "Look who walked into the room." Oh God. Oh well. Anyhow, we should note, by the way, Mr. Rayo. Now, I was just kind of looking at some numbers before the show started. Philadelphia. All right, I have the watches and warnings map up, and there's not a whole lot happening. Philadelphia has only had about 1/4 of an inch of rain for the entire month of May, and they're not going to get any rain the next 2 days, so this will go down as the driest May on record in Philadelphia.
And it'll be interesting to see on Thursday with the new drought report whether or not we once again are going back to droughty conditions here in the Northeast with the protracted spell of dry weather we've had of late and through much of this month.
Well, most of the rain, because I saw New York City, I think has a couple of inches for the month, which is below average, by the way. And I think if you go look at numbers across New England, you're probably going to find numbers that are higher. Last year, if I recall, or maybe it was the year before, or maybe it was last year, where southern New England, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and into Massachusetts, they were in a really seriously long drought stretch. And I don't think it's the same this time around. But I think if you go south, and certainly if you go west of New York City and you go into Pennsylvania, I got a friend of mine who lives up in Halstead, Pennsylvania, near the Susquehanna River, and he says everything, all the creeks in the rivers are very low. The creeks are all drying up. Not good for local fishermen that like to fish the fresh waters there. We have a severe thunderstorm watch up right now in parts of central Nebraska and southwest Nebraska, a couple of counties in northeastern Colorado. Some air quality issues still going on in southeastern Minnesota, across southern and western Wisconsin, in and around Lake Michigan, including Chicago, and also the counties in southeastern Michigan, including Detroit. So that covers that. And we've got some flood watches up in the Sierra Nevadas and on the Nevada side of the California-Nevada border. A couple of flash flood watches up in southern Idaho and even a couple of counties in northeastern California. Otherwise, fairly quiet around the country. And here's the latest surface map. Clearly, I saw this morning they had a front drawn across Massachusetts to about Albany, and going back westward, and clearly, looking at the wind direction and the wind speeds and some of the temperatures in southeastern and southern New England, we definitely got backdoored here with this front that is pushed all the way down to Chesapeake Bay.
That helped to put a dent in the heat from yesterday, although we are expecting later in the week a surge of very warm, if not downright hot air. In fact, Joe, it looks like on Friday, temperatures locally, when I say locally, I'm talking about here in the lower Hudson Valley, could reach to within a degree or two of 92, and cooler, of course, along the shore. That'd be a nice day to go to the beach or hit the beach, would probably be on Friday. And then, speaking of backdoors, another backdoor front is going to edge rapidly southward down I-87 and very quickly knock the temperatures back from the 90s on Friday in many inland areas into the 70s on Saturday. So once again, we're going to be seeing a quick change from hot to cool or cooler later on in the week and the start of the weekend.
Yeah, there's a nice little high there. The Great Lakes high has sort of resettled itself in New Brunswick, and it's nosing southwestward into southeastern New England. You see how the isobars are aligned here, and all again the backdoor front has pushed its way. If you look at the 5 o'clock temperatures, for example, one side on the west side of the front in Pennsylvania, it's in the middle and even upper 80s, and on the east side, it's in the low and middle 70s. So clearly there is a boundary zone there. And as we go further south, what's left of the coastal low that came ashore in South Carolina, now just a series of lows that are being analyzed there, a very broad area of low, let's call it lowish pressure. There's no real wrapped up low. So just to make the point that the winds when they picked up, it was really from the backdoor cold front coming through, and not really from any kind of gradient between the low to the south and the high to the north. It was really all about the backdoor cold front and the high. And you see a front that goes all the way down to almost the Gulf Coast. We've got gorgeous dew points here, by the way, in the low and mid 50s. I mean, it's really been comfortable here all weekend long, just absolutely beautiful. And that is the same across Alabama, northern Mississippi. Temperatures there, for example, in the low 80s with dew points in the low and mid 50s. And of course, you jump to the other side of the front on the south side along the Gulf Coast, and it's in the middle 80s, middle to a few upper 80s, and dew points in the mid 60s, and even some dew points in Florida, in North Florida, in the low 70s. Oh, joy. Oh, bliss.
Well, for those people, I mentioned this last week, a lot of the retirees who say, "Oh, I'm going to retire and go to Florida." I hope they're used to the high dew points, because that, plus, of course, the seemingly ongoing risk of some kind of a shower or thunderstorm almost daily. So that's life in the Florida Peninsula in the summertime.
And over the Great Lakes, a pretty nice day, although a little bit of smoke still around, and the higher pressures settled there. So that's cool. And you've got this boundary through the Dakotas and all through the western plains and down into the southwest. And this is where we're seeing some shower and thunderstorm and a little bit of severe weather today. Not a whole lot happening on the left coast, where it's fairly quiet and nice, reasonable temperatures with reasonable humidities. Here's the the northeast satellite loop this evening, and you see the edge of the high clouds got to about central New Jersey and now beginning to sink southward. A little heavier in the cloud cover when you get down into Maryland and Virginia. Still seeing a little counterclockwise turning here in eastern North Carolina, some kind of low center there. Again, what's left of that coastal low that came inland. And then on the wide view, as we take a look, you can see where the lightning strikes are. Southern Virginia, eastern North Carolina, seeing some thunderstorms, and also in parts of central Texas, we're seeing some lightning strikes, particularly northwest of San Antonio, in and around and northwest of San Antonio. Some flash flood warnings that are up there. And also back up through the Dakotas. You could take a look at the radar and see the patchy rain areas with some thunderstorms in around the Washington D.C. Baltimore area down into northernmost North Carolina. Radars are quiet on either side. Here's the mess right over San Antonio. We've got from there northwest, Joe, there's 5 flash flood warnings for the counties there surrounding San Antonio. It looks like much of that is drifting southeastward, so that's interesting. And in the severe thunderstorm watch area, we've got a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings underway in central Nebraska, but nothing crazy from that standpoint. And I don't see anything that triggers off any kind of big severe weather risks, not just here, obviously, in the Northeast, but through much of the country over the next several days. The severe weather risks are going to be somewhat subdued, somewhat.
You would have thought that with the temperatures expected to get into the 90s on Friday, and with a backdoor front coming down from the north and a noticeable change to noticeably cooler weather for Saturday, you would have thought that maybe later Friday or Friday night, there might be some kind of an outbreak of severe weather. But apparently, we're going to go through that. With I guess that weather front is going to be, for the most part, dry. There's no and there's no evidence or no suggestion that we're going to be in line for any kind of severe weather as we finish out the week.
Yeah, I mean, the dew points are probably going to be pretty subdued all week long, I would think. There's no real moisture inflow from anywhere.
Was it they say predictability or probability too low for Friday? Or
Well, why don't we check? Shall we?
early?
And as we check, just want to give a note and a thank you to Trish Sparacchio for hitting the Super Chat tip jar tonight. Thank you, Trish. And Leon Probitsky hitting the Super Chat tip jar. Thank you so much. So tonight we have a slight risk. This was a marginal risk this morning. They kind of elevated it to a slight risk in that zone in central Nebraska. A larger area of marginal risk surrounds that, area of marginal risk in South Texas, and that's it. So that's for tonight. For tomorrow into Wednesday morning, 2 areas of marginal risk in the Western Plains and also up in Minnesota into northwestern Iowa. On day 3, excuse me, it's once again marginal risk back where, but in the Western Plains. This is for Wednesday into Thursday. And as we look at the day 4 to 8, we've got predictability too low, predictability too low, predictability too low, predictability too low, all the way through. So the answer to your question, Joe, is predictability too low.
Yes. As William Huber said, Joe R., it's getting dry out there.
Yes,
And,
lawns are screaming in agony soon, and water bills are skyrocketing from sprinklers going on. WPC's not impressed either. Look at the area of no precipitation for the next 7 days. Long Island, the Hudson Valley to the Catskills, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, except for a small patch there that goes up into southern New York. But you know what? It's light green, and that's 100th to a 10th of an inch in that light green. And then the next level green that you see over New Hampshire and Maine, that's a 10th to a quarter. Shall we all yawn in unison? Yeah, I thought so. Much of the east, except right along the immediate coast of the Carolinas down to Georgia, and also in Florida, where it does look like it could be, some decent rains there in central and south Florida of 1.5 inches to maybe as much as 3 inches plus, and I'm sure there'll be some locally higher amounts in any thunderstorms. Some big rains forecast over the next 7 days in parts of the southern plains, in western Oklahoma, western Kansas, been very dry there. And anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches extends all the way up into the northern Rockies. You see the heavy rains for the Sierra Nevadas, also 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches over Minnesota, but a good chunk of the eastern U.S., except for the immediate southeast coast, is not going to see much rain in the next 7 days.
And with that, I'm sure that I didn't get a chance to mention, but I'll mention it now, that on the drought map, I won't bring it up. But in northern sections of Maine and eastern sections of Pennsylvania, a few spotty areas in New York, including, I might add, Suffolk County, abnormally dry. That's at least the designation as of last Thursday. And I'm sure with this prolonged spell of dry weather, that we'll see even more areas of abnormally dry conditions in the next update, which will be on Thursday of this week. So we're back in the throes of a really dry weather pattern. Anything but dry, though. If you live in the Carolinas, where this low pressure system, this upper low and this coastal low, just pretty much ruined everything for outdoor activities all 3 weekend days, Saturday, Sunday, and today, Monday.
So I've got the upper air up, and you see the split flow. I mean, that's really what we have. We've got a big upper high sitting over, doesn't want to let me make the H. There we go. big upper high sitting over Lake Huron. You see where the southern part of the jet that I've drawn in. There's two cutoff lows on both coasts, almost on the same latitude there, off the coast of California and right on along the coast of North Carolina. That upper low can't move northward because of that upper high to the north of it. All the flow in Canada, the west to east flow, is deflected even further north. So obviously, if you're under that upper high, if you're under that big ridge, you ain't gonna see much rain. Now, as we move on into the rest of this week, the Carolina upper low just sort of disintegrates. And the ridge begins to at first begins to weaken, then it actually re-strengthens on Thursday in back over into Michigan. So there you go. With regards to warming temperatures, we'll probably see temperatures try to reach into the 80s on Thursday, depending on the wind direction and depending on where you're located. But yeah, you're right. For Friday, we'll probably see some 90s. Now, there's troughing that's dropping down in eastern Canada. It's off the map. You can just see it on the upper right, and that is going to bring that weather front, sort of a backdoorish type weather front through Friday night and early Saturday morning. And then we've got another trough that's diving in for the middle part of next week. Next week may turn out to be rather cool if this verifies. I mean, this is not a warm pattern by any stretch of the imagination.
Figures, right? Just as we get into the new month of June, all of a sudden we break out into a abnormally cool spell.
Yeah, I mean, naturally, of course, it's a pattern. This is an upper air pattern you'd pay money for in the Northeast to see in the wintertime for the snow lovers, as we have to make sure we rub that in. There's troughing in the middle. You've got an upper low in the plains and another upper low that's in southwestern Arkansas. So you've got a general troughing in the middle of the country, another upper low that's cut off of California. So it's a fairly blocky look here. Fortunately, for those of you who like nice weather, it's not a doom and gloom blocky pattern. This is
no, we're not going to be stuck. We're not going to be stuck with this for a pattern of day after day after day of dull, dank, and dreary. That's the nice thing.
No, and going forward, I mean, I'm taking this all the way out. Look at this. I mean, who knows if this part of it's right, because now we're out, past June 10th. But yeah, let's form a 3-contour close cutoff in Ohio, and just sort of linger it down the Appalachians. Now, if this is correct, and there are some of the longer long-range models. I was talking with Bill Goodman yesterday, pointing out that some of the longer-range European models and the UCMET and a few others were showing that the pattern could get wetter by the time we get to the middle of the month. And if this GFS would sort of line up that way, so if you're looking for a break in the dry pattern, maybe around the middle of June, you might see it.
It's possible if you want to go that far out, and if you believe at face value what we're seeing now in the upper air. But and I might point out that on Friday this past week, last Friday, the experimental 3 to 4 week frog from Climate Prediction Center actually had a goodly part of the eastern United States in an above normal pattern the middle and latter part of June. So maybe it might be a cool start to June, and then we'll flip to a warmer weather pattern later on in the month, maybe.
Or they might be wrong.
Or they might be wrong, yes.
just for laughs, I want to just kind of look at the anomalies here, the temperature anomalies. So we know that it's below normal. This is a pattern where you're going to see below normal temperatures more to the south than you will to the north, and the north will be above normal. So, and again, this is in the morning, 18Z is in the afternoon, but definitely very warm across southeastern Canada, right through the northern plains, temperatures well above normal there. And then you get into some above normal temperatures Thursday and Friday. For New Jersey, Pennsylvania northward, but for Virginia southward through the southeast and Florida back through Texas, it's all cooler than normal temperatures there. And then as we go into the weekend, now here's the back door. So you see that blue over New Brunswick and Maine pushing southwestward. So by Saturday afternoon, they have temperatures actually showing up significantly below average, Joe, maybe about 5 to 8 degrees below average
Yep.
for Saturday and for Sunday um, as well. And then going into next week, look at that. That's some serious chill here for June.
It's chilly.
Yes, it is. So, we'll have that odd hot day on Friday, and on the warmish side Thursday, and a hot day on Friday. But that's really going to be about it. Look at this temperature anomaly. I mean, this is going out now, 13, 14
Could
days
this
from
possibly
now.
be another one of those Garden of Eden summers that I sometimes make reference to when temperatures stay below the norm?
Well,
This is definitely not. This is definitely not a pattern where you would look for, 4 or 5 or 6 days of haze, heat, and humidity.
no, and you're not. Definitely for the first half of the month, that's not going to happen. Whether it happens for the second half remains to be seen, but it's definitely not going to happen for the first half.
Frank Scalera is asking on the chat board, wow, is this a June or January map? That's a good question, Frank.
I know.
We certainly didn't have it. We certainly didn't have anything like this or remotely like this during January of this year.
Nope. By the way, just to throw this in at snow lovers, as I was looking at the years in Philadelphia now, this is in Philadelphia, in the years where the top 10 driest Mays, okay, I noticed that in 8 of those years, the snowfall in the following winter was above normal. So just bear that in mind. I mean,
I've been saying that.
it could be a correlation. It could be a causation. I don't know.
I've been saying for the longest time to all the people, all the naysayers saying that's it. Global warming has kicked in. We're never going to see a snowy winter here in the New York metropolitan area again. And I say over and over that in those years where there has been a paucity, a lack of any, so let's put it in another way. In those years where we've had a less than double-digit snowfall, those winters, the very next winter, we have come back big time. It's almost as if nature said, all right, here's your snow, and I'm going to try to make up for what you missed out last winter, this winter. So I honestly believe that next winter, we're going to pay through the nose, depending upon your viewpoint, whether or not you like snow or don't like snow. But I think it's going to be a completely different script coming our way for next winter as opposed to what we went through this year.
Well, we're now June, so it's only going to be about 4 short months before we start talking about all that again.
Isn't in terms of we're supposedly heading for an El Nino for later in the winter, later in the year into next winter, but isn't it true that when the El Nino is not a strong or moderate El Nino, but a weak El Nino, that sometimes loans itself to producing quite a bit of wintry weather?
Well, weak or moderate is fine. Okay, if you have that and you've got the right setup in the North Atlantic and in Canada, yeah, that's fine. Strong El Ninos are an issue. Weak La Ninas, moderate La Ninas, you could make it work for you. Strong La Ninas, no. And just think back, Joe. We had 2 years ago. What was it? Well, now it would be 3 winters ago. We didn't have anything. We had no La Nina. We had no El Nino, and then the upper air pattern set up like it was a strong La Nina or a strong El Nino because Canada was all wrong. I'm sorry,
Right.
not Canada. Well, Canada was all wrong, but the stratosphere was all wrong. It was wrapped up like a tight little ball over the Arctic region, and then nothing that happened up there correlated down to the bottom of the atmosphere. So, there's all sorts of ways that you could get, go in all sorts of different directions. Let's get there and see, and then we'll take a look. In the meantime, the rain off the Carolinas and Virginia, that's going to last for another day or so. Then eventually it just sort of peters out. We warm up here in the Northeast. The Southeast, it's a bit of a different story because there is moisture around with some areas of clouds and showers. Another front comes through Friday night into Saturday and pushes southward. GFS wants to have a few spotty showers Friday night. I don't think it's going to amount to very much. and then the high pushes down. You get the cool air that comes in from the northeast. That high, this is unusual. Look at the high. Look at the track of this high from New Brunswick. Okay, Saturday afternoon, right? You see it?
Right.
Okay. Watch it. It moves southwestward. When do you see that happen? By Monday, it's in western North Carolina.
Somebody earlier in the chat board, I forgot who it was, asked the question, oh, whatever happened to, you said, do you remember when we used to have weather systems move from west to east? They don't seem to do that anymore.
Well, here comes another front for, now we're into June 6th and 7th.
I think it was Anthony.
Yeah.
Anthony was the one who said that, yeah.
This is June 6th and 7th, where you've got a nice, robust high coming down from Lake Winnipeg. Look at that. There's light blue snow just north of Lake Superior on Wednesday, June 7th. And rather coolish air that we showed you on the anomalies. So not much hope. I mean, if you're looking for rain, you got to hope that the models are correct and keying on stronger troughing in the east, but west of the coast. And that's why you see what the GFS does. This is the weekend of the 10th and 11th, where you got a low that comes out of Alabama and heads up toward Delaware with big rains here. And there you go. There's your wet weather. So you got to hope that they're right. The models are right about the pattern change. One other thing I just want to mention, there's been a plethora the last couple of weeks. We've seen, I don't know, 3 or 4 lows that have formed off the southeast coast. There's another one that's going to probably form late this week. But this one looks like it's going to be further out to the east and move away and not be of any consequence to the coastal areas. There were a couple of runs a few days ago where it was trying to show something forming off North Carolina or South Carolina, drifting southward, or in another instance off the South Carolina coast, south of Charleston, east of Jacksonville, and then drifting southward along the Florida East Coast. That does not appear to be happening here. And I just want to mention too, I noticed this when you pull up Google on your phone, you get a whole bunch of news articles, and I keep seeing. I didn't even think to look to see what the source of this, but there have been a series of them the last 4 or 5 days. The Hurricane Center is watching 3 tropical waves, 4 tropical waves. So I look on the Outlook, and there's nothing on the Outlook. Now I know where they get it from. There's a tropical weather discussion where they get into the minutia of all these minuscule waves that are out there. Those aren't going to develop. So these articles are so deceptive that they give you that clickbait headline, making you think that there's a tropical wave. There's 3 tropical waves. Oh my God! There's always tropical waves out there.
They're groping. They're looking for something to titillate you. But there is no titillation effect because, as you just mentioned, Joe, we know, based upon the NHC 7-day outlook, that these things aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So on that note, let's do a little Briller Jeopardy. And we're going to go just do some weather Briller Jeopardy tonight, Joe. So this is for New York City, Central Park in the month of June. The month of June, the highest temperature ever recorded in the month of June. Chatboard folks can play along.
I believe it. We've got to the triple digits in June at least once. So I'm going to say 101 degrees.
And if you say 101 degrees,
yes,
you would be correct. Now, can you guess the date? 101, folks. 101 is the answer.
101, a silly millimeter longer. No, that's...
No. Right. Or New Jersey 101.5.
You have to be of a certain age to understand that little ditty. The date? Well, I've got 30 chances for this, right?
Can you guess the date?
All right. Well, I'll say it came in the second half of June, and I'll say June 26th.
Wow. Chuck Cardillo got it right. June 27th.
Aye.
June 27th, 101, June 27th in 1966.
Oh, well, that was leading up to that incredible stretch of heat for the 4th of July
Yes.
in 1966.
Yeah, wasn't it like 9 or 10 days in a row or something?
It was I still remember that. It was atrociously hot. And I think it was July the 3rd, not the 4th, but the 3rd, that New York City. See, when you ask somebody what's the hottest temperature ever experienced in New York, they always say the same thing: July 9th, 1936, 106 degrees in Central Park. But I believe on July the 3rd, 1966, at LaGuardia Airport, which is, after all, in New York City, 107-degree temperature. So take your pick as to, pick your poison in terms of which extreme you want to go with. But it was hot in 1966. And
Now, what was the lowest temperature in the month of June?
well, for that, now we have to determine whether or not it has ever dropped into the 30s in June. And I would say, yes, it has. And let's go for the first half of June. What will be the coolest temperature in New York City? I'd say it, maybe not necessarily recently or even in the recent 20th century, but maybe in the late 19th century, it might have gotten down to something like 37 or 30. I'll say 38 degrees, and the date I'll choose will be June the 8th.
Of what year?
How about 1887?
Well, you know what, Joe?
What?
Guess what?
I got it?
No, you were dead wrong.
Oh.
Trish Sparacchio and William Uber, very close. Very close. Any of you who have said 30s, you're dead wrong. William Uber and Trish Sparacchio saying 43. Chuck Cardillo right behind it at 44. I'm sorry, 42. The answer is 44. 44. And
So it never dropped into the 30s in June in New York City,
no.
even in the 19th century.
Right.
Wow.
And what year was that?
The 44?
The 44. What's the date?
I don't know. June 2nd, 1943.
Now you know what? You're not bad. Very close. June 1st, 1945.
Wow.
June 1st, 1945. Now, what was the coldest daytime maximum in the month of June?
Oh. Well, I'll tell you what. A few years ago, when we had that miserable Memorial Day, if I remember correctly, we shattered the lowest max temperature. I think it was like 50 degrees, and that was at the end of June. So I'll say in New York City in June. How about 55?
Double nickels.
Yes.
Well, Chuck Cardillo said 51. And Norm Roberts has double nickels as well. Trish Sparacchio has 49. Latex Dreams has 51. William Uber has 53. Guess what? Split the difference. 52 on
52.
On June 2nd, 1946.
Wow.
52. So the 44 record low on June 1st, 1945. What we don't know, by the way, is on that 44, was that, in the morning of June 1st, or was that before midnight? Because I'm thinking I'd have to go back and see if we could, look.
I would think it would probably be one of those cases where the temperature was slowly rising later in the day and into the evening hours. Well,
no, we'll have to do a little research on that.
yes.
And finally, the most precipitation in the month of June and the year.
Why do I think we just recently had this, like in the last 10 or 15 years? Very, very wet June. Probably something like 9 inches. And I don't know why. I'll say June of 2010.
Okay. 9 is close. 2010 is, well, you know, over the course of a century, I suppose you could say it's close. Um, David Carter, 8 inches. No, not 8 inches. Chuck Cardillo, very close, Chuck, 10.6 inches. Very close. And the answer is 10.26 inches, and that was set in 2003. 2003.
Wow. Same year as the second President's Day snowstorm.
Yes. Now to point something out, because I really wasn't paying too much attention to this today. I did look at it Saturday. I don't think I looked at it yesterday or today. I did see a news story about how, the Philippines was about to get wiped out. Okay? I just love how they get stories wrong, Joe. Just love how they get stories wrong. And I'm bringing up, this is Typhoon Marwar, okay? It is recurving, okay? It is recurving east of the Philippines, and not by a short distance either, okay? I mean, it's close, but it is recurving to the east of the Philippines, so they're not going to get anything much from this, okay? And it's forecast to track east of Taipei, all right, east of Taiwan and the city of Taipei, and then make a gradual turn to the northeast after that. So, I don't know what they were talking about with regards to the Philippines other than, showing people evacuating and that kind of stuff. Not to say that they shouldn't evacuate, but the story was pretty deceptive. And by the way, maximum sustained winds, taking a look at it on the satellite, it's nowhere near what it was in terms of strength. I think at one point, Joe, over the weekend, I think on Saturday, it got down to 903 millibars. So it was a Cat 5. I mean, it's still a hurricane, but it's nowhere near in strength. Now, top winds are 90 knots or 105 miles an hour. I mean, it's still a powerful storm, but it's well past its peak intensity, and it will not go back to that intensity now that it's turned more toward the north.
Well, those stories that you just mentioned, Joe, I'll echo what Steve LaPointe has on the chat board. It's clickbait. That's
well, this was on live TV. I think it was on the ABC. I was flipping around on the channels. Well, I think it was the ABC. Yeah, because they also had they have the connection to the Weather Channel, right? Or is it CBS?
CBS does.
So then it was CBS that I saw the Weather Channel one on, where I didn't know this, but apparently 233 million people are going to see temperature highs in the 80s on Thursday.
Right. I saw that.
I mean, it's June. Okay, it's June. It gets into the 80s. It's a country of 300 million people.
Not the upper 90s or hundreds, ladies and gentlemen.
The 80s.
The 80s, yes.
The 80s. And Buffalo's going to get to 88 on Friday.
Before you know it, Buffalo is going to be getting to 88. Before you know it,
which might be a record high for them. I don't know, but so what?
They'll be dropping like flies. What else?
Anyway, all right. I think we've kind of did pretty good for with no major storms around. It's 8:25, so we will put an end to this. Now, can we put an end to this?
Yes. I think so. We'll see each other tomorrow night, 10 minutes later than normal at 7:45, and we will be here.
We will. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show, of course, brought to you by our affiliate Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing network on the planet. Makes a great Father's Day gift. And they got all sorts of other weather gadgets that you might be interested in, lightning detectors and, instant point to a spot and get the temperature thing. Okay. So take a look at that. They got fabulous clothes. The referral link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. And of course, if you use the coupon code Joe and Joe Weather Show, what do they get?
10%.
Joe Pardo.
10%
10% off. And Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. 631-756-1125 is the phone number. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com. And thank you once again to Leon Probitsky and Trish Baraccio. Even on a holiday, Joe, we still have 2 faithful viewers who hit the tip jar tonight.
Thank you so much. We will see you tomorrow night at 7:45 Eastern Time. Nighty night.
Yes, night.